All right, Dr. Rashad Richey. They call him doctor. I don't think he has a real doctorate, to be honest with you. In my previous video, I went over his doctorate that he supposedly got from this seminary college or whatever. Looks pretty shady. At any rate, he's going to weigh in on this professor who called the cops on a couple of students who showed up late for her class. And as usual, Dr. Richey is going to screw everything up. He's not going to get anything right. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
All right, Dr. Richey, take it away.
You see, this really pisses me off because I'm a professor. A college professor at Georgia State University called the police on two students because they were 2 minutes late to class.
That's not why the cops were called. All right? We'll see in a minute the real reason. And if you saw one of my earlier videos, you already know.
The police come and they actually back the professor.
The police aren't there to take sides. They're not going to hold court there in class. What they're going to do is ask, does the teacher have the authority to throw a student out of the classroom? She does. She wants them out. Out they go. That's what it comes down to. That's how police operate. When it comes to trespassing, if you're the owner of the business and you want to trespass somebody, the police aren't going to get into an exchange about who's in the right and who's in the wrong. They just look at you as the owner. Does he have the authority to throw somebody out? Yes, he does. Out that person goes.
Even though the professor is not aligned with the university policy.
Yeah, more about that later.
Let me give you the background to this. A GSU student and TikToker explains. Here it is.
On them today at Georgia State's perimeter campus in Newton County for being 2 minutes late to class. You heard me correctly, 2 minutes late to class, and they had the police called on them.
Now, the first thing I notice about her is her hairstyle. Very unusual. I'm not saying it's good or bad or anything like that or ugly or whatever. I'm just saying it's unusual. I don't think I've ever seen a girl with that kind of hair before. Hairstyle.
When the professor then asked them to leave, Taylor responded and said, "We paid to be here." The professor, Carissa Gray, then responded, "Okay," and left the room. When she returned with 2 armed police officers. The woman cop, whose name I do not know, proceeded to grab Taylor's things and try to forcibly remove them from the room.
Now you have to wonder, how does she know all this? That's a good question. How much of this is she making up? And how much of it is real? Or was there even an incident at all? You have to ask these questions now. Back in the day, you wouldn't. But nowadays, after the Jussie Smollett crap, you have to wonder, did anything really occur?
They then said that if they did not leave, they would be charged with trespassing. When the students arrived to the classroom, the door was wide open. They were allowed to enter, walk all the way to their seats, sit down, and proceed to take out their things to take notes. The woman police officer proceeded to hold on to Taylor's things until Taylor agreed to leave. She then went down to the advisement center to figure out who it was that she could talk to file a report. She was directed to go to the department head of Professor Mason, who then told Taylor that her only 2 options were to either stay in an environment that she didn't feel safe in or take an F.
Well, okay, so the environment that she didn't feel safe in wasn't really that bad of an environment. All you had to do was go to class the next day. What did she really expect the teacher to do? Pull out a knife and start stabbing her? Really? I mean, what was so unsafe about it? All you have to do is show up on time, and the professor not going to call the cops on you. It's not that hard.
And we went across the street to the other building to file a complaint with the student life department.
Look at those eyes. That's amazing. Hang on.
Across the street to the other building to file a complaint with the student life.
Just look at them. I wonder if they've been augmented in some way.
department. We were then informed that this was not the first time that the police had been called on a student for something irrational.
Irrational? Well, it's not irrational. You may not like it. You may think it's overly harsh, but it's not irrational. I mean, it makes common sense. The teacher has a policy. The students violated it. She wanted them thrown out of class. And when they refused to leave, she called the cops. That's not irrational.
Taylor also disclosed that she felt as though this action taken by Professor Carissa Gray was in retaliation to an earlier event that happened earlier on in the semester.
Well, tell us about that earlier event. I mean, that sounds rather interesting. It sounds like you're not telling us everything. Retaliation, or I've had enough of this student doing this.
Time and time again, we've seen the police being weaponized against Black people, calling the police on two.
I also noticed that huge pair of earrings that she has on. My gosh, those things are huge.
Students for being 2 minutes late to class is extremely unreasonable and dangerous.
Dangerous? Oh, give me a break. Come on. I mean, how do you take this shit seriously?
Both of the students, a woman and a man, started crying because they were so terrified of what could happen to them.
A man started crying because he was terrified that the police came and told him he had to leave the classroom. Yeah, that's what we're expected to believe. My gut feeling is something's not right about this story. I have a feeling that she is making up a lot of this, and maybe the entire story.
So let's count the ways here. So here are the threats so far. You can go to jail for trespassing, even
you can go to jail for trespassing.
though you are a student paying to be there, paying that professor's salary. That professor is there to educate students.
You can actually go to jail for trespassing, even though you're a student paying tuition there. Yes, you have it right. It can happen easily. Okay? You go in and make an ass out of yourself in a class and refuse to follow rules and make it to the point where students can't even learn. Yeah, they can have you thrown out of class. Now, I'm not saying that happened here, but this whole notion somehow that, well, if you're a student and you're paying tuition, you can never be trespassed. Oh, horse shit.
The professor is now creating a new prison, school to prison pipeline from the university.
Oh, so this is the new university to prison pipeline. Oh, God. You have got to be kidding me. Those students that are getting thrown out of the class are not going to prison. They're not going to go into the hokey or whatever they call the prison nowadays. It's not going to happen. At most, they're probably going to get fined a couple of $100. Come on, man. This is embarrassing.
And when that threat did not work, now here's another threat. You're going to take an F.
Yeah, you're going to take an F if you don't show up in class anymore. That's what the threat was. Not that you're going to take an F in the class because of this incident, but the class goes on. Tomorrow, they're going to hold class. And guess what? You're going to have to be there. If you don't show up anymore, yeah, you're probably going to fail the class. That's a threat? Well, if that's a threat, then every student is being threatened every day by every professor on the planet. Because every professor can fail a student if they want to.
All against policy. And I will show you how that is against policy. Obviously, it is against ethics.
No, it's not an ethical argument. Where is the ethical argument? Or do you know what ethics are?
For a professor to treat any student like that inside of a classroom is shameful. It is shameful. Now, let me say this, because I did receive text messages, a couple of emails from people at Georgia State University, professors that work at Georgia State University that I count as friends.
Yeah, didn't happen. He doesn't have any professors that are friends at Georgia State. He's making this up. I mean, the dude is an absolute pathological liar in my book.
They asked me not to do this segment.
They asked you not to do this segment? Well, let's suppose that that is real, that they actually did tell you. Well, they're telling you because guess what? They think you're going to embarrass yourself. What actually happened might not be what you think happened. So don't go shooting your mouth off about this incident until we actually do an investigation. I'd like to know if this incident even happened.
I'm going to do this segment.
Oh, you're so brave and tough. Those professors at Georgia State told you not to, but you're going to do it anyway. Oh, Lord.
Period.
Ooh, period. Truth by blatant assertion.
All right. A black professor, black college professor, called the police.
He finally tells us, yeah, it's a black professor. He didn't want to. He pushed it downstream as much as he could. But yeah, the professor who called the cops is black. Can't make this shit up.
On 2 black students for arriving to class late at Perimeter College at Georgia State University, prompting outrage from the students' peers on TikTok, and rightfully so.
Now, according to this, it's peers, plural. We've only heard from one. Okay, so now we have to ask, was it 2 students or only one? Was it 2 minutes or was it 10 minutes? You have to look into the exaggeration effect. And that's typically what happens when they get a hold of these stories and they want to go on TikTok. They have an audience and they want to satisfy the audience's outrage. And so they're going to naturally exaggerate things a little. So how much? Well, we won't know for a while.
TikTok creator and college student Bria Blake posted about the incident on Wednesday evening in the video, which has over 160,000 likes.
I have a feeling the 116,000 likes wasn't just about the content.
It has increased since. She says 2 of her classmates, known as Taylor and Cameron, were 2 minutes late to an English class. The professor, whom Blake names as Carissa Gray.
I cannot find anything on Carissa Gray at all. Nothing. She's not on the roster at the university, so she would have to be an adjunct professor. If she even exists. But the point is that as an adjunct professor, she makes nothing. She probably barely makes minimum wage. She probably doesn't have a lot of training. She may not know what the university policies are on students who just walk into class late and then tell you, no, I'm not leaving. Okay, she's an adjunct. She's temporary, very low paid. She probably got her doctorate or maybe at least a master's degree and has had a hard time finding work. She found this adjunct position. She joined on and she barely scrapes by. And now these people, these assholes are going to want her fired. Okay, and keep in mind that she's black. So all of the racism that you talk about that the black people experience every day, she's experienced a lot of it, probably far more than those 2 students. And she has persevered and she went on and got at least a master's degree in English, not an easy degree program, okay? It's a liberal arts degree, sure, but in the liberal arts, it's probably the most rigorous, and it is a rigorous degree. So I'm not going to take anything away from her at all. She should be applauded for persevering and earning this higher education that she did, but she's not going to be applauded. Why? Because of a couple of punk students that did not want to obey the rules. All right, that's my spiel. But again, I have no evidence that Carissa Gray even exists. Oh, she probably does, but I'm just saying, until I find some evidence of it, who knows?
Asked them to leave because they were late. Gray did not immediately respond to NBC News' request for comment.
Did they even reach her at all? Did they even try to reach her? I have no idea. Again, I can't find her. But then again, I didn't really work hard to find her. But if anybody out there can find some information about her, I'd appreciate it. Put it in the comments below.
Okay, so we don't have a picture of the professor. We do have a picture of the president of Georgia State University, Dr.
He has to put the picture of the president. Gee, I wonder why.
M. Brian Blake is president. Dr. Blake, according to every bit of information I have, is a stand-up guy. And
he's a stand-up guy according to all the information I have. And all the information you have is by looking at the picture. That's all it took. Oh, come on.
Looking forward to the way he handles this based on the leadership profile he has.
I'll tell you how he's going to handle it. If this Carissa Gray really does exist, she's almost certainly an adjunct professor, and he's going to fire her. Why? Adjunct professors are disposable. They're temporary faculty. They're easy to get rid of. They have no recourse. They have no protections at all. Due process means very little to an adjunct. And so you can go ahead and toss them aside and easily replace them. He's going to fire this poor woman to satiate these students. And she's going to go out looking for work. She may be on food stamps already for all we know, but it's going to get really tough on her. And that's what happens today when you take on the younger generation that can't cope with anything. The police showed up and asked me to leave. Oh my God. The tears are coming down their faces as the police come to tell them they have to leave. These students can't cope with anything nowadays, and people like this president are going to kowtow to them. I can almost guarantee you.
Georgia State University said it is looking into the situation. Here's a quote. "We are looking into this matter and how it was handled by the faculty member. Campus police arrived after being called by the faculty member and immediately de-escalated the situation between the students and faculty member. Clearly no crime had been committed, so there was no arrest."
Now again, I'm not certain that anything really did happen, okay? But it certainly seems like it here by reading this. But notice something, that the police came in and de-escalated the situation. As I've said before, the reason why they were able to de-escalate it is because they have a badge. They walked up and they have their uniforms on, and they told these students, hey, I'm telling you right now, if you don't leave, we're going to take you to jail. And the students were like, tears streaming down, probably going berserk because they can't cope. And they probably grabbed their stuff and finally left. That's how they de-escalated it. I doubt they brought out any tricks other than that.
That's according to the university. According to the narrative, that's not exactly what happened. According to the narrative, the campus police, they did not make things better. According to Blake's retelling, Taylor said that they, as students, paid to be here and refused to leave.
Oh, they refused to leave. Yeah, okay. And by the way, it's Blake's retelling, but I don't think that she said that she saw the incident. Did she? I didn't see it. I didn't hear anything. So how does she know? I don't know.
Gray then left the room and returned with 2 armed police officers. This is in a classroom.
Yeah, that's right. It's in a classroom. Good. You're learning.
You have to understand the atmosphere. So literally other students.
I have to understand the atmosphere. Gee, I've only taught maybe a couple of thousand classes. So yeah, I think I understand the atmosphere and what it's like to be inside a classroom.
Are witnessing their fellow students have the police called on them. The police come, they got guns.
Yeah, those fellow students, half of them are probably applauding. They're probably happy as a pig in slop that these 2 students that came in late and refused to leave are having something done about it. Okay, don't you think for a moment that every student in that classroom rallied to their aid. The A students probably are quite happy with the fact that those 2 students were removed. Just guessing.
And I've said this to you before, and I'll say it again. When you call the police, you're calling a gun. When you call the police, you are calling a gun to the situation.
Okay, the police are carrying guns. Sure, did they pull their guns on the students? No, so what's the point? What's the relevance of this? I mean, they're also carrying tasers, so you're calling a taser to the situation. They're carrying flashlights, so you're calling a flashlight to the situation. What's the point of this? And I'll tell you what it is. He wants to push this idea, this imagery of the police coming in with those guns pulled out, threatening the students. Didn't happen. Guarantee it. Yeah, the cops are carrying guns because they're cops. What kind of cop would leave his gun behind while he tended to this situation? Suppose something horrible happens and he's caught without his gun. What the hell would happen then?
All right. 911 means emergency.
I don't know if they called 911. Did they? I don't recall that being said. But since he said they called 911, they probably didn't.
That's what that means. Here's more. Georgia State University campus police and the major of police operations at the perimeter campus did not immediately respond to NBC News request for comment.
They probably can't find out any information on this event. That's why they're not responding. They're like, Carissa Gray, do you know who that is? No, never heard of her. She's not on the roster anywhere. Is she teaching? I don't know. That may be what happened.
Stuff like this cannot keep happening to Black youth in America. Stop weaponizing the police against Black people. Georgia State University does have policies against disruptive behavior, all right? They have a policy, it's a classroom policy. Student code of conduct, real simple, anybody can read it. The school policy states that an instructor may summon campus police to remove a student whose behavior, and I quote, poses an immediate threat to the safety of themselves, the instructor, or other students.
You know the use of the word themself, that this is actually a college talking, right? Where did he get this? Well, we'll play some more.
Last time I checked, a student being late for class poses no threat to the student, student body, nor the educator, right? Now, many of you will say, wow.
Many of us will say, wow, you're full of, because that is not the policy. Now think about this, gotta think critically here. Let's go back. It says here that the school policy states that an instructor may summon campus police to remove a student whose behavior poses an immediate threat to the safety of themselves, the instructor, or other students. Sure, but is that the only condition for which a professor can call the cops? No. Obviously, there are plenty of examples where a professor can call the cops. So for example, suppose that he is teaching and a student comes up and sits in the front row and he's got a swastika, and every time that this teacher opens his mouth, the student says, Mein Führer, or something really nasty. Or maybe he's wearing a KKK robe or something, right? And that is disruptive, right? But it's not threatening the safety of anybody there. I mean, he's not shooting anyone or pulling out a weapon. So under those circumstances, the professor would have no choice but to go ahead and just continue teaching on. Or suppose that you just have a regular student who just simply will not shut up. They sit in the front row and they're talking to their friend, and no matter how often the instructor says, please be quiet, the student won't. And finally, the instructor says, you're going to have to leave. And then the student says, no, I'm going to stay here and talk to my friends. According to your little policy here, the instructor has to just motor on as best they can. They can't call the cops. Well, by the way, if they can't call the cops, who can they call? They're not going to call the dean, and they're not going to call the chair, especially if it's a night class. The dean and the chair have all gone home and they're asleep. They are not going to come to campus and take care of this situation. The chair can't do anything. He has no power over the situation, and the dean has no power over the faculty members. So the dean and the chair are not going to help you. The only ones that can are the cops. I mean, what he is telling me can't possibly be the only element of student code of conduct regarding this kind of situation. So I went to the Georgia State University website, and it says here, disruptive student conduct in the classroom or other learning environment. But it does say rescinded February 9th. I tried to find the updated version. It's nowhere to be found. If you can find it, great. Maybe I missed it somehow. But whatever the case, up till February 9th, here was the actual policy regarding students disrupting the classroom and what the teacher can do about it. Okay, so the procedure is, step 1, instructor's response to disruptive behavior. When disruptive behavior occurs in a class, 1, the instructor will warn the student. Well, she probably did. She probably told him, hey, if you don't leave, I'm going to go get the police or something. Okay. That warning will consist of orally notifying the student that his or her behavior is disruptive and that it must cease immediately, or the student will face removal from the class. All right. Does it say anything in here about the student threatening other people? No, it does not. If the student fails to comply with the instructor's warning, the instructor may require the disruptive student to immediately leave the classroom for the remainder of the class period. If the student refuses to leave, the instructor may summon the campus police to remove the student. Okay, now you may be wondering, well, these students were not disruptive. Well, we don't know. We don't know what really happened. We're just getting one side of the story. And boy, have we learned not to trust that asshole. Okay, so we don't know what happened there. But let's go back to what he said. He said that the policy requires that there be an immediate threat to the safety of the students or other students. No, this is called cherry picking, okay? The student code of conduct regarding disruptive behavior is a lot larger than that, and he selected a certain little sliver of it, and he's now making this as the only element of disruptive behavior. This is called a straw man argument.
A student being late for class poses no threat to the student, student body, nor the educator, right?
Straw man argument.
Now, many of you will say, wow, isolated incident, professor was out of line for doing this. But according to the students, this problem permeates in the culture. There's a reason.
Culture of what? The classroom, the teacher, the university? Gee, I wonder.
This professor felt comfortable enough to call the police on 2 students who were 2 minutes late for class. It shocks the conscience. It really does. This is extreme.
It's extreme? No, I've seen some extreme behavior by professors in classroom. This was nothing.
Let me give you something, an example of something that happened in 2020. 2020, Indiana University, all right, had a similar situation. Indiana University says a white professor accused of discrimination after he called university police to his classroom.
At least they're not going to be able to nail her for discrimination, much to their chagrin.
Because a black student refused to change seats, won't teach for the remainder of the semester. They suspended that individual, and I think eventually got rid of that white professor.
Okay, so here's another serious problem with people like him. They take one incident, they take another incident, and they try to make the claim that these are essentially the same thing. We don't know. Let's go back. It says here that the white professor was fired essentially because he asked students to change seats, but we don't know why he asked them to change seats. Maybe he asked them to change seats because he doesn't like black people sitting on his left or something. Then he should get fired, okay? We don't know if this was justified or not because we don't have any context. And that's another really bad thing about this dude is he provides no context for anything. Everything is taken out of context and we're supposed to fill in the lines. And of course, the way he phrases everything, we always come to the conclusion that's incorrect. Well, I look at this a little more deeply. And most importantly, I don't trust him.
Won't teach for the remainder of the semester. They suspended that individual, and I think eventually got rid of that white professor. Georgia State University representative said the policy refers to extreme behavior, talking about the conduct, code of conduct, refers to extreme behavior that may endanger others in the classroom.
Yes, that policy, the one he read, does refer to extreme behavior that may endanger others in the classroom. But that wasn't the only element of the policy towards disruptive behavior. Again, classic straw man.
That's when you call the police. Calling the campus police over tardiness or other disrespectful behavior, the representative said, is not typical of university faculty.
She didn't call the cops over tardiness. Did not. They refused to leave. That's why she called the cops. And he says, it's not typical of university faculty. I don't care what's typical or common. Does it meet policy or not? Now, I don't know, because I don't know what actually happened inside that classroom.
Once again, all due respect to Georgia State University, that's not what your students are saying, okay? Your students are saying quite contrary.
Yeah, and the students could be wrong. They could be exaggerating. Have students ever lied or exaggerated? Gee, I wonder. If you've ever taught a college classroom, yeah.
Your students are saying professors are calling cops on students for ridiculous things. According to Blake, both Taylor and Cameron were terrified of what could happen to them. When Gray called the police, given the history of disproportionate police violence against Black people, calling the police on 2 students for being 2 minutes late to class is extremely unreasonable and dangerous, Blake said, and I concur.
Yeah, I don't give a shit what Blake said. That's ridiculous. Calling the police to have a couple of students removed from class doesn't place them in danger. Now, if the students pulled knives out, yeah, they could get snuffed out by the cops. And of course, people like him would be saying, well, it's the police's fault. Okay?
Right? This is foolishness and dangerous. Students are in college to get a proper education. Professors have to engage in their pedagogy to make that happen.
Sure, but professors also have policies about attendance. Mine was less strict than hers. I mean, I've said this in my other video. It was not nearly as strict. I was much more forgiving on this kind of thing. And frankly, I don't like professors who have really, really strict policies. But it's her policy. And while I disagree with her policy, once the students violated it, she has the right to go ahead and enforce it.
When professors start acting as oppressors in the classroom, we have a serious problem, and you damn sure have a serious problem with me.
Oh, we have a problem with you? Oh, we're shaking in our boots. Who gives a damn, Mr. Phony PhD?
Now we're gonna follow this story because at this point, I'm still disappointed in the lack of conclusion and remedy in this situation.
Let me translate that for you. He's upset that she wasn't fired immediately because of what this TikTok personality said on her video. That's what pisses him off. That president should just act immediately once he hears a story from any of these students, especially if they're Black students, about a professor. That, there's no recourse. There's no due process, nothing. They shouldn't even investigate, according to him. There's no need to investigate at all. Just fire her. And of course, this professor has done what? Worked hard to get where she is. She should be held up as an example for the other students, for them to do all they can do, but instead he wants her fired.
This professor is robbing these students of a learning opportunity, right? If these students are showing up late to class, there's a real opportunity to practice your interpersonal skills of like conflict resolution.
Well, the students could have done that, right? They could have practiced their skills in interpersonal communication by leaving when told to do so by a person who's the authority figure in the classroom. But they chose not to. And when the cops came, they could have practiced their interpersonal communication skills a bit better than they probably did. But again, we don't know what happened.
Obviously, they're showing up late to class. She doesn't want them to show up late to class. There's some tension there, but instead of resolving the tension by having a discussion, asking, hey, why are you late to class? She went and called the police.
Well, she might have asked those students, why are you late? You don't know whether she did or not. You are basing your entire argument off of a TikTok video personality. Critical thinking, man, it's gone. These people can't practice it. They don't know it. They cannot ever, for once, think, gee, maybe the story I'm hearing isn't quite right. Maybe I should listen to the other sides before taking sides in this thing. They cannot do it.
Right? And so right there, an interpersonal learning opportunity is lost because of this tendency that has grown in the United States history, like just over the past 20 years. Just look at like playground fights in elementary school used to be resolved by teachers or or principals, and now they were often resolved by police officers.
Yeah, that's because the kids started stabbing each other.
And that is one tendency. And the other aspect of this that I think is absolutely critical to understand is really this negligence that comes along with that, which is people, when they call outside authorities, think they're getting impartiality. What they are really getting is indifference, because we all know how police officers operate, especially when you're talking about like young Black kids that are just college students, right? They're kids, they're college students.
All of a sudden, college students are kids. Mm-hmm.
And if you're calling police, right, to respond to the situation, you are quite literally putting their lives in danger. You are playing roulette with their lives.
Playing roulette with their lives? Oh, come on. Who buys this crap? Well, I can tell you a few people that do. Whatever the case, the instructor doesn't care if she's getting impartiality or indifference. Doesn't care at all. She just wants the students out of her classroom. That's all. She does not want the cops to come in and hold court, asking, well, now who's at fault here? Okay, this is not an investigation. It's her classroom. She doesn't want those students in there. Okay, was she in the right to do that? Well, we don't know what happened. Maybe, maybe not. But whatever the case, as a student, when the instructor tells you to leave, you just got to leave. And if she asks you to leave unfairly, you can pick that up later. You can file a complaint or whatever. You might even get an apology. But to sit there in your chair and say, no, I'm not going to leave, and here comes the cops, boy, that was not a good way to handle things, was it?
And so that it's just absolutely critical that we understand that what we think is impartiality is really indifference.
Yeah, very well said. And I would say this, as a professor, I've had a lot of situations in the classroom.
Oh, here we go. Here comes the stories.
I remember one young lady, she was waiting outside of the classroom. She had her baby with her, and the babysitter had not come to the campus to pick up her child. And she was concerned that the babysitter was going to run too late. And so I said, come on in the classroom. I held the child and I taught class.
You held the child while you taught class. Why didn't the mother hold the child? This story makes no sense. I mean, she has her own kid with her. Why doesn't she hold her own kid?
We did that back 4 years ago.
Yeah, this is a made-up story. Give me a break. And what if that kid was crying and screaming and hollering and nobody could learn because of it? Is that fair?
We've had situations where one student, this was last semester, one student, she's a single mother. She had some issues with her son. She was unable to make the final. She could not come on the final exam day because of an issue with her son. So I scheduled her final on that Sunday evening. That's simple.
Yeah, it's simple. And just about every professor, including me, has done this quite often. Don't raise yourself up as some sort of noble god because of this. But keep in mind, the university has policies about this, and you have to be very careful when it comes to final exams. It's not up to you to let students take those final exams anytime you want that to happen. Okay, a lot of professors get in trouble over this. They reschedule final exams, and the dean comes in and says, no, the final exam schedule you have is the one you're going to follow. And allowing students to take the exam at other times can be a university violation. Again, though, we've all done these kind of things. Don't think that you're special in this regard. And that professor that you guys are slamming may have done these kind of things for her students many times in the past. You don't know. So at any rate, I'm done with this asshole. In my opinion, he has a phony PhD. And unless somebody shows me otherwise, I'm going to maintain that. And he has employed every fallacy in the book. He's completely accepted one side's version of this story, and that's his normal human behavior. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.